Welcome to another episode of History of the Popes. Today we turn our gaze to a figure whose pontificate flickers like a candle in the Roman night, brief, almost ephemeral, yet illuminating in its quiet witness. I speak, of course, of Pope Anterus, the 19th successor of Peter, whose 40 days in the chair of the fisherman remind us that sanctity is not measured in years, but in the depth of one's fidelity to the gospel. To grasp Anterus, we must first step back into the 3rd century, that crucible of the Roman Empire under the shadow of Maximinus the Thracian. It is the year 235, and the air in Rome hangs heavy with the scent of fear. The emperor, a soldier risen from the barracks, has turned his wrath upon the Christians, seeing in their refusal to honour the gods of the state a threat to the fragile cohesion of his realm. Persecution is not new to the Church. Think of the savageries under Decius or Valerian, but under Maximinus it strikes with a particular brutality, targeting not just the masses but the leaders, the shepherds who guide the flock. Enter Pope Pontian, Anterus's immediate predecessor, a man whose election in 230 had brought a measure of stability after the schisms stirred by Hippolytus. Pontian, we are told in the ancient catalogues, was a Roman by birth, steadfast in his pastoral care. Yet in the autumn of 235, imperial soldiers descend upon the Christian gatherings. Pontian is seized, along with Hippolytus, irony of ironies. The anti-pope who had once challenged him now shares his chains. Condemned to the mines of Sardinia, Pontian faces a grim choice: to preserve the Church from the chaos of a leaderless see under duress. He does the unthinkable. On September 28, 235, he abdicates. It is the first such resignation in papal history, a gesture of profound humility, ensuring that the keys of the kingdom would not rust in the grip of a captive. And so, in the flickering light of those perilous days, the Roman clergy convenes in haste. They elect Anterus on November 21st, 235, a man whose very name, derived from the Greek Anteros, evokes the mutuality of love, a reciprocal grace that binds giver and receiver. Who was this Anterus? The sources are spare, as they often are for these early bishops, pieced together from the Liber Pontificalis and the fragmentary epitaphs unearthed in the catacombs. He was by tradition a Greek, born perhaps around 170 in Petilia Policastro, a rugged coastal town in Calabria, that toe of Italy's boot where Hellenic settlers had long mingled with Latin stock. His father, or was it his former master, bore the name Romulus, evoking the wolf-nursed founder of Rome itself, a poignant irony for a Christian leader in the heart of the pagan city. Some of the ancient texts suggest Anterus knew the lash of slavery in his youth, freed only to embrace a higher liberty in Christ. If true, it would mark him as a bridge between worlds, the servile hierarchies of the empire and the radical equality proclaimed in Galatians, where there is neither slave nor free, but all are one in the Lord. Yet to reduce Anterus to biography is to miss the poetry of his moment. He inherits a church battered yet unbroken, its catacombs alive with the murmurs of prayer and the scratch of styluses recording the passions of the saints. Pontian's abdication leaves a void, but also an opportunity, for, in the brief interregnum, the community has tasted the bitterness of abandonment and now rallies around this new shepherd. Anterus steps into the role as a curator of memory. The Liber Pontificalis credits him with ordaining one bishop for the Diocese of Fondi, that ancient port south of Rome, a quiet act of extension amid contraction. But more intriguingly, it speaks of his zeal for the acts of the martyrs, the Gesta Martyrum, those raw, urgent narratives scribbled in the aftermath of arena and scaffold. Imagine it. In the dim vaults beneath the Via Appia, notaries, those humble scribes appointed perhaps as early as Clement of Rome, scurry like bees, gathering parchments stained with the blood of Polycarp or Perpetua. Anterus, we are told, insists on greater rigour in their compilation, demanding authentication, cross-verification, lest fable creep into testimony. Why? Because in an age when the empire brands Christianity as a superstition, these acts are not mere hagiography. They are the Church's counter-narrative, proof of a love stronger than death. By archiving them, Anterus safeguards the seeds of tradition, ensuring that the blood of the martyrs becomes the seed of the Church. It is an act of defiance wrapped in scholarship, a way of saying to the powers, "Your swords may fell our bodies, but our stories endure, etched into eternity." The Martyrologium Hieronymianum and the Liber Pontificalis hail him as a martyr, slain perhaps for this very archival fervour, accused, some say, of subverting the state's monopoly on truth by preserving tales of imperial failure. His death on January 3rd, 236, after a mere 43 days, fits the pattern. Emperors like Maximinus brook no rivals, divine or otherwise. Yet the more sober catalogues, like the 4th century Liberian, speak only of his falling asleep in the Lord, a euphemism for natural repose unadorned by the palm of martyrdom. Modern historians, sifting the strata of legend and fact, lean toward the latter. No chains for Anterus, no Sardinian exile, but perhaps the quiet attrition of age or illness in a body worn by witness. What matters, though, is not the mechanism of his departure, but its meaning. In an era when popes like Fabian would soon face Decian edicts demanding idolatrous sacrifice, Anterus's brevity underscores the precariousness of leadership. A pontificate as fragile as a host on the tongue, yet sufficient to nourish. And then there is his burial, a detail that lingers like incense in the air. Anterus is the first pope interred in the crypt of the popes, that sacred gallery in the catacomb of Calixtus, hewn from the tufa by the hands of the faithful. Excavated in the 19th century by Giovanni Battista de Rossi, its walls bear the faint Greek inscriptions, Anteros Episkopos, Bishop Anterus, followed by the date of his consecration. No grand sarcophagus, but a simple loculus, sealed with a slab that speaks of humility. Pontian's remains would follow later, repatriated from Sardinia, but Anterus claims the primacy of place, his body a cornerstone in the necropolis that would cradle the relics of so many successors. It is as if in death he ordains the future, the popes as a chain unbroken, their tombs a testament to the communion of saints. From this shadowed corner of history, what reaches us across the centuries, Anterus invites us to reflect on the eloquence of the ephemeral. In our own time, when institutions clamour for permanence, endless reforms, media-savvy hierarchies, we might pause at his example. He ruled not by decree but by devotion, not by longevity but by legacy. His care for the martyr's acts reminds us that the Church is, at heart, a keeper of stories, narratives of ordinary souls who, in extraordinary fidelity, revealed the face of Christ. Think of it in the broader sweep of papal history, from the apostolic vigour of Peter to the Baroque flourishes of the Renaissance popes. Anterus bridges the ancient and the medieval, a quiet pivot in the drama of salvation history. Nor can we ignore the Greek inflection of his name and origins. In an age when Rome was becoming ever more a crossroads of cultures, Syrians in the clergy, Africans in the seas, Anterus embodies the Church's Catholicity, its embrace of the oikumene. He is no isolated Latin prelate, but a son of the Eastern Shore, perhaps schooled in the philosophical dialogues of Plato or the mystical yearnings of the Alexandrians. This Hellenic strain would flower in later fathers like Origen or Athanasius, but here in Anterus it is nascent, a reminder that Peter's rock was quarried from Jewish soil, yet rolled westward on waves of diaspora. As his successor Fabian emerges, elected, legend tells us, by a dove's descent upon his head, evoking the Spirit's gentle election, Anterus fades into the annals. Yet his feast on January 3rd calls us still. In the octave of Christmas, amid the joy of incarnation, we honor this fleeting pope who mirrored the babe in Bethlehem, vulnerable, brief in his earthly span, yet eternal in impact. Perhaps that is the deepest lesson. The kingdom comes not in thunderclaps of power, but in the still small voice of witness preserved against oblivion. And so, as we conclude this meditation on Anterus, let us carry his name like a prayer. In the grand oratorio of the popes, he is but a single note, yet without it, the harmony falters. Until next time, when we explore another chapter in this sacred chronicle,